What is conservatism? Conservatism, or at least American conservatism, is very difficult to define, since its differing manifestations arise historically as reactions against specific cultural and political events, trends, and movements. For this reason, under the umbrella of conservatism, one can find a diversity of sometimes contrary points of view and policy prescriptions. In some ways, American conservatism is like a church consisting of parishioners who share a creed about which they are conspicuously unaware until they discover a heretic within their midst. It is then and only then that they begin offering reasons and constructing arguments for what they had believed was just common sense until the heretic arrived. This is why many writers often refer to conservatism as a kind of pre-analytic. By the way, when a philosopher says pre-analytic, what he or she means is simply, it just strikes people as right before they think about it, which is what, and most of the time people are right. So for many writers, they often refer to conservatism as a kind of pre-analytic respect for the givenness of the proper ends of human nature that is expressed in an enduring moral order sustained and inculcated by custom and convention in continuity with the generations that preceded us and that represent a reservoir of inherited wisdom that no one age could have itself created. As Russell Kirk puts it, in essence, the conservative person is simply one who finds the permanent things more pleasing than chaos and old night. A people's historic continuity of experience, says the conservative, offers a guide to policy far better than the abstract designs of coffeehouse philosophers, unquote. Or, I might add, TED Talk social scientists or evolutionary biologists. Consequently, in order to understand conservatism and to properly explore the topic of this evening, we have to ask ourselves how well this devotion to both permanent things and our inherited traditions has been expressed in our politics over the past 5 decades in 4 different areas of concern. Pardon me? I still have to get used to your dryness. It's better, though, than Central Texas. My wife texted me and said it's 92 degrees and about, 60% humidity. So let me just say that again. We have to ask ourselves how well this devotion to both permanent things and our inherited traditions has been expressed in our politics over the past 5 decades in 4 different areas of common concern to which conservatives have typically gravitated. And these are the areas: constitutional law, economics, national security, and public morality. In each area, conservatives have made their presence known with differing degrees of success and failure. So first, judicial conservatism. Judicial conservatism, sometimes called originalism, is a reaction against a way of reading statutes and constitutions that seems to bypass the ordinary avenues of representative government. Virtually unknown as an identifiable judicial philosophy just 50 years ago, it has become such an important concept that whenever a president, whether a Democrat or a Republican, makes an appointment to the federal bench, the prospective judge or justice will claim that if placed on the court, he or she will interpret the legal text as originally understood. They all say that. This is why when Harvard Law School Dean Elena Kagan was nominated in 2009 by President Obama to our nation's highest court, she said in response to a question in a form given to her by the Senate Judiciary Committee, quote, "There is no federal constitutional right to same-sex marriage," unquote. However, in 2015, Justice Kagan found such a right. Even Justice Stephen Breyer, who does not identify as an originalist, nevertheless argues that the Constitution does not require originalism, which means that he appeals to the document's original meaning and thinks that the founders understood it in a certain way in order to reject originalism. So there's a sense in which originalism has kind of won the day. That is, it's the default position that everyone has to genuflect to. I'm Catholic, I can use the word genuflect for those who... When Justice Kennedy issued his opinion in Obergefell v. Hodges, the Supreme Court case that found a constitutional right to same-sex marriage, he made a kind of originalist argument. He writes that, quote, "From their beginning to their most recent page, the annals of human history reveal the transcendent importance of marriage." By the way, whenever Kennedy uses adjectives like that, be very nervous. They usually are, they make up for the reasoning that should have been there. After citing Confucius and Cicero, and acknowledging how untold references to the beauty and grandeur of marriage have been expressed through the ages in a variety of forms and across different cultures, he concedes that it is fair and necessary to say that these references were based on the understanding that marriage is a union between two persons of the opposite sex. Unquote. He goes on to affirm that the centrality of marriage to the human condition makes it unsurprising that the institution has existed for millennia and across civilizations. Since the dawn of history, marriage has transformed strangers into relatives, binding families and societies together, unquote. It kind of reminds me of that quote from Roe v. Wade where Justice Blackmun said, "If man is to survive, pregnancy will always be with us." He literally said that. You know immediately that you're in the presence of no small intellect. Now, even though originalism is in a much better place in the popular culture and the law schools than it was 50 years ago, and even though the presence of conservative judges and justices spread throughout the federal judiciary has forced non-originalists to wrestle with their arguments and to craft opinions that sound originalist, the politicizing of the courts has been ratcheted up significantly. A prospective jurist's judicial philosophy and its implication for a specific set of issues dealing with abortion, marriage, religion, race relations, and political speech is now the exclusive focus of presidential appointments to the federal bench. The irony of originalism's success is that it has allowed non-originalist political figures to imply, on the one hand, that some form of originalism is essential to a properly functioning judiciary, while on the other hand, explicitly promising their supporters that they will only appoint judges and justices that will follow specific left-of-center policy prescriptions that at one time in our nation's history had been decided by the states and or our federal government's political branches.